Chapter 2: The Heroes of Mile 214. Morning did not announce itself. It simply arrived, pale light spreading across the Badlands in thin, reluctant bands. The fire had long since burned down to ash, its warmth gone, leaving only the faint smell of smoke clinging to clothes and fur. The iron spine lay nearby, twin rails catching the light like watchful eyes that had never closed. The land was still too spare. Paw Strong was the first properly awake. He moved through camp with practiced ease, checking packs, stamping out embers that had already surrendered, and making sure nothing had wandered too close in the night. Mountain returned from a slow circuit of the perimeter, ears twitching, tail low. He paused just long enough for Bear to rest a hand against his neck, scratching once in quiet thanks, before ranging off again. The hood rose without ceremony, armor settling into place as if it had never truly been removed. He said nothing he didn't need to. One stood at the edge of camp, feathers dark against the lightning sky, revolver in hand. He whistled softly, an old tune, borrowed and reshaped by repetition, then stopped to reload, each motion precise and unhurried. Sirius Flax stretched, winced, then straightened with a smile that suggested he had already forgiven the ward for yesterday's near-death experience. No one asked how he was feeling. They broke camp and turned east. The iron spine hummed beneath their boots as they walked, not louder than before, but somehow more present. The land stretched wide and exposed on either side. Dry earth cracked by heat, scattered rock and slag where industry had once clawed at the ground and moved on. Scrub grew in stubborn clumps, thorny and sparse, surviving out of spite rather than abundance. Telegraph poles marched alongside the rails at uneven intervals. Some still carried wires that sagged and hummed faintly in the heat. Others ended in snapped stubs, their lines torn free long ago. No birds perched here. That absence gnawed at the nerves. Bear foraged as they went, eyes on the land rather than the rails, gathering what little the Badlands were willing to give. He worked steadily, quietly assembling more healing supplies from salvaged materials and hard-earned knowledge. It was not glamorous work, but it mattered. One walked light on his feet, revolver checked and rechecked, head tilting now and then as if listening for something only he could hear. The hood maintained a steady pace near the front, presence heavy and unmistakable, his attention split between the rails ahead and the empty space beyond them. Sirius Flax lagged just enough to make a point of looking. He had been wrong before. The bent spoon still haunted him. This time would be different. As they walked, Sirius scanned the ground with exaggerated care, poking at disturbed earth, tapping stones with the toe of his boot and muttering under his breath about odds, intuition, and the universe owing him an apology. Then he stopped. He crouched and smiled. The box was small, half buried near the edge of the rail bed. Its lock was so simple it felt almost insulting. Sirius popped it open with minimal effort and immediately began pulling out its contents like a street magician who had finally found his audience. Coins first. Not a fortune, but real. Enough to jingle, enough to matter. Then vials. 3, maybe 4. Empty, clean, carefully sealed. Whatever they had once held had been removed deliberately. Finally, a badge snapped cleanly in half. Sirius held it up, turning it over in the light, grin widening with every second. He said nothing at first, which somehow made it worse. He had found treasure after not finding treasure. He was unbearable about it. Mountain walked over, paused, and pissed on Sirius Flax's leg. It was unhurried, deliberate, thorough. Mountain stepped back, watching with deep, unblinking satisfaction as Sirius froze, expression caught somewhere between outrage and disbelief. No one intervened. This was between them now. Sirius took a slow breath, wiped his leg with what dignity he could salvage, and said nothing. The grin faded, replaced by something tighter, more thoughtful. Mountain sat, watched him. This was not over. Later, when they stopped briefly to reassess, Sirius examined the broken badge more closely, with careful hands and a focus that suggested this mattered more than he wanted to admit. He worked the pieces back together. The repair was clean, too clean. The badge would pass casual inspection, even professional scrutiny if no one looked too closely. It bore the marks of rail authority. Outdated, yes, but still recognizable. More importantly, it felt right. A tool for lying convincingly, mechanically sound, it would grant advantage when posing as rail authority. Sirius tucked it away with visible satisfaction. Mountain continued to watch him. They pressed on. The rails dipped slightly as the land fell away into a shallow basin. The air felt heavier here, not with heat, but with memory. Structures became visible ahead, low, functional shapes of iron and stone arranged with purpose rather than comfort. A mile marker stood upright beside the track, 214. The ground nearby was packed down hard. marked by old drag lines and repeated use. This wasn't damage, it wasn't chaos, it was organization. An unloading place, the hood slowed, gaze sweeping the area. Juan fell quiet, revolver ready bare, and Mountain moved together. Senses alert, Sirius managed to move quietly, despite everything, slipping forward just enough to get a better look, smugness temporarily replaced by focus, hidden angles, overlapping sightlines. A place meant to be observed as much as used, nothing moved, not yet. The iron spine hummed softly behind them, watching, waiting. They advanced into mile 214 with the caution of people who had already learned the rails could build their own defenders. The structures were plain and functional, loading sheds of riveted iron, storage platforms, chain hoists, and work yards arranged with the cold logic of industry. Dust lay thick across most of it, but not evenly. Some paths were recently disturbed, some doors hung open, others had been sealed from within. The silence was wrong. No workers, no voices, no tools, no birds. Only the low hum of the iron spine behind them and the creak of metal settling in the heat. One moved first, slipping through sidelines and checking corners with revolver drawn. Bear and Mountain swept the yard by scent and spoor, finding tracks that began as boot prints and ended in scorched drag marks. Sirius examined ledgers, lockers, and anything small enough to steal or interesting enough to lie about later. The hood simply walked toward the largest warehouse, and the others followed because that was often the shortest route to the truth. Inside they found it the being nested among broken crates, warped rails, and coils of torn telegraph wire, fused into a crude throne around a furnace heart of pulsing light. It was not holy machine or Holy Spirit, but some dispossessed intelligence that had taken residence in abandoned iron and declared the place its own faces, formed briefly in its heated metal skin, workers perhaps, or memories of them, then melted away. It spoke in shrieks of steam, snapped wire, and fragments of stolen station. Command leave, property, maintenance delayed. The hood stepped forward without hesitation. Juan fired first, the shot cracking sparks from its shell. Bear sent Mountain wide to harry its flanks, while Sirius hurled flame into the piles of scrap, anchoring it to the floor. Caught between steel, shot fang, and fire, the creature lashed out wildly, tearing beams loose and showering the room with sparks. Then the hood drove it back with sheer force, axe carving through the iron mass, while Bear toppled its furnace core from beneath. With its shell broken and its hold on the warehouse failing, the being gave a long metallic scream and fled upward through roof vents and shattered gantries as smoke and embers, abandoning mile 214 to the living. They searched what remained, claimed what supplies had survived, and marked the site as clear enough for honest folk to risk again. No one spoke much on the walk back. Victory in such places was never clean. By dusk they returned to camp, carrying salvage, soot, and the growing certainty that the world along the iron spine was full of things that should have stayed buried. Mountain took first watch. Sirius insisted repeatedly that he had been crucial. No one agreed.